ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here to the Full Story on WYAB 103.9. My name is Matthew Bishop. So in June, Texas suffered a horrible defeat in court in regards to one of its abortion laws. So that law was HB 2, and in a 5-3 vote, the High Court overturned restrictions passed as part of House Bill 2 in 2013 that required all Texas facilities performing abortions to meet hospital-like standards, including minimum sizes for room and doorways and pipelines for anesthesia. The court also struck down a separate provision, which had already gone into effect, that requires doctors to have admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles of an abortion clinic. Now, I think that decision was absolutely ludicrous. I mean, these women are having to undergo potentially life-threatening procedures, and it was considered an undue burden for these facilities performing these dangerous procedures to live up to hospital standards and to at least have admitting privilege to a hospital in case things go wrong. I mean, that's just makes no sense to me, that decision. I mean, that to me wasn't even a pro-choice type thing. To me, it was a bill to protect those having an abortion, but make sure they are operated on in medically sufficient buildings. I mean, they have to put them on anesthesia, put invasive objects into them. I mean, and you don't even have to live up to the standards of a hospital. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. But that's not what this next story is about. So this story is about a new Texas abortion rule that requires abortion clinics to either cremate or bury fetal remains instead of the current practice, which is to dump them in a landfill. That's right. So right now, if women get an abortion in Texas, they take the fetus, the baby, and throw it away. They literally throw it away and put it into a landfill. This is human remains, to remind you. So Texas health officials who proposed the rules in July are adopting the new requirements with few changes following months of public comment periods, 2 hours of hearings, and more than 35,000 comments. So in the final rules filed with the Secretary of State's office on Monday, health officials clarified that the requirement does not apply to miscarriages or abortions that occur at home. And addressing confidentiality concerns, they also added language to indicate that birth or death certificates will not be required for proper disposition under the rules. So this was proposed at the direction of Republican Governor Greg Abbott. The Health Commission had argued the rules will result in enhanced protection of the health and safety of the public. These are human remains, and they are saying you don't want things getting out. And Abbott said in a fundraising email that the rules were proposed because he doesn't believe fetal remains should be treated like medical waste and disposed of in landfills. I mean, absolutely, I think he's absolutely right on that point. But the new requirement, I think expectedly, prompted outrage from the reproductive rights community, which accused state leaders of pushing unnecessary regulations to make it harder to get an abortion. So medical providers have also raised concerns about who would bear the cost associated with the cremation or burial, a figure that can reach potentially thousands of dollars. So in response to these concerns, health officials indicated that healthcare facilities and not patients will be responsible for the disposal of fetal remains, and that related costs will be offset by the elimination of some current methods of dispositions. Officials also wrote that rules carry out the department's duty to protect public health in a manner that's consistent with the state's respect for life and dignity of the unborn. Like I said, these are actual human remains. So reproductive rights advocates on Monday, I like how they call them reproductive rights advocates. That's like my favorite. No, they're advocates to kill babies. That's what they are. They said on Monday that the state had failed to provide evidence that the rule benefits public health or improves current medical practices. So Heather Busby, who is executive director of the NARAL Pro-Choice Texas, said in a statement, "The state agency has once again ignored the concerns of the medical community and thousands of Texans by playing politics with people's private health care decisions." So listen, these abortion rights people, they really just make me sick. I mean, I don't know how you don't think of a fetus. I mean, they don't think of fetuses as humans. That's what they say. That's what they said in the Supreme Court opinion. Well, a fetus is not a human. But, even though it has arms, legs, and even a beating heart, they're still human remains. Even if you don't consider them a human or whatever, those are still human remains, even if you kill it. I mean, you already took the life away from them, and then you just dump them in a trash can. I mean, how disgusting is that? I mean, it's things like this that make me wonder if we're really a civilized society. And who cares if it costs thousands of dollars to properly put these fetuses to rest? Nobody is forcing you to perform abortions, And if you do it, you bear the cost of burying or cremating that fetus. I mean, I know they will probably pass this cost down to the woman, but I don't feel sorry for her either. If you're going to voluntarily take the life of a human being, you're just going to have to bear that cost. I'm sorry. You're doing it. You're taking the life away from something. I'm sorry you have to pay a little bit for it. But I guess, it's still cheaper than raising them, right? I mean, that's why you're doing it, to avoid that. Now, I think there should be exceptions for when the state, for instance, exceptions when the state will pay for it, such as rape, incest, life of the mother, and miscarriages. At that point, I think the state should pay for the proper disposal of the fetus. But I believe the fetus should receive proper interment or cremation, no matter how it's done. But in certain circumstances, I think the state should pay for it in those limited circumstances. But like I said, but if they're voluntarily doing it and they don't fall into this, then yeah, the clinic has to pay for it. I'm sorry. Like I said, you're taking life. I'm sorry you have to bear that cost. Of course, like I said, they're going to pass that cost down to the woman. That's on them. They're the ones passing it down, by the way, not the state. The state's charging the hospital or whatever clinic that does it. But they're the ones who are going to put the cost on the woman. But like I said, I don't feel sorry for her too, because you are taking a life. I'm sorry you have to pay a little bit to bury the body. So, but like every abortion rule ever passed, the new rules are likely to be challenged in court. So in a letter sent to health officials, lawyers for the Center for Reproductive Rights warned that the proposal will almost certainly trigger costly litigation. While the center did not take immediate legal action, senior staff attorney David Brown on Monday said the rule was an unnecessary burden and an intrusion on a woman's personal beliefs. Like I said, never think about the child that is actually being killed. That was one about her. But they're saying it's unnecessary burden. That's the standard that we use. It's an unnecessary burden to a woman getting an abortion. That's the Supreme Court rule. Well, I say bring on the costly litigation. Plus, Donald Trump is about to be president, and he will appoint someone who will look after the rights of these unborn children. So you might not be as lucky this second time around once Donald Trump puts his person on there. Now, Donald Trump's not going to get rid of abortion. I know that's been a lot of in the news. He's not going to get rid of abortion, I don't think. The Supreme Court's not going to overrule that much precedent, I don't think. But they can definitely lower what it means for an undue burden. And I think this whole thing, like I said, saying it's an undue burden for these clinics to have hospital-like standard, that to me is ridiculous. That's just looking after like I said, looking after the health of this woman getting the abortion. So you don't want them getting disgusting instruments or whatever using or having bacteria. These places need to be cleaned, and they need to have admitting privileges in case a woman does bleed out or something like that. You need to be able to get to the hospital quickly. But they don't have that. So these women can die on the operating table because they're not living up. These clinics aren't living up to hospital standards. They don't have admitting privileges. So these women's lives are at risk. So I think that may be overturned. Also, too, though, with these fetuses, like I said, these are human remains, and they need to be treated as such. And that's not an undue burden. I know it's 3 or 4, whatever it costs to bury it or cremate it. It's not an undue burden. It's not going to cost thousands of dollars to cremate it either. I'm sure a lot of these clinics should have a quick, a quick cremation with one of the funeral homes or whatever. But these like I said, human remains need to be disposed of as human remains and not as trash as they currently are.